didn't find home in a cabin or a town, but in the eyes of a woman who had already decided to stay. Eli walked alone through the broken streets of the old colony town. The wind whispered through shattered windows, carrying dust and echoes of lives long gone. Every house, every cabin, every empty shop told the same story. Humans had tried to settle here, and humans had failed. Yet he kept moving. That was what humans did. When the world gave them nothing, they kept going. His boots crunched on gravel, and he paused at an abandoned playground. Rusted swings swayed as if pushed by invisible hands. Eli's eyes scanned the horizon, where the mountains rose jagged against the red sky of the alien planet. This world was harsh. The air was thin, and storms came without warning. But humans survived. They always had. That thought gave him comfort as he adjusted the strap of his pack and walked on. He entered the remnants of a small cabin, the door hanging loosely on its hinges. Inside, the floor was covered with leaves and dust, and the fire pit was cold. Eli ran his fingers over a carved wooden table, worn smooth by hands long gone. He could imagine the family that once lived here, the laughter, the meals, the small routines of life, and then the silence that followed. Eli shook his head and stepped outside. Cabin after cabin, town after town, he had seen them all. Some were barely more than ruins, their walls collapsed and roofs caved in. Others had faint signs of care, a shelf with tools carefully placed, a small garden patch struggling to survive. These were reminders that humans never stop trying, even in the worst places. Eli admired that, though it made him ache. He wanted that too, a place where he could rest, a place to call home. But every time he thought he might have found it, the emptiness reminded him he was alone. By late afternoon, he reached the edge of the forest. Trees here were taller than anything on earth, with silver-bark trunks and leaves that glowed faintly in the dim sunlight. Birds, or at least bird-like creatures, sang from the branches. Eli paused and breathed deeply. The forest smelled alive, different from the dusty towns. He felt a spark of hope. Maybe someone lived here. Maybe someone had made a home that could survive. He walked carefully into the trees. The forest floor was soft, covered in moss and fallen leaves. Strange insects clicked and hummed around him. Every step made him alert, but he did not feel fear. Humans had evolved to survive. He reminded himself of that whenever he felt his pulse quicken. Hours passed and the forest thickened. Shadows stretched long and the air grew cooler. Just as he was considering turning back, he saw it. A small walled homestead nestled in a clearing. The walls were made of interwoven branches reinforced with metal sheets. Smoke curled from a chimney. Light glimmered from a window. Someone was alive here. Eli's heart raced. He approached slowly, making no sudden movements. Humans often learned caution the hard way, and he had seen enough to know it. Yet as he drew closer, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity, and maybe even relief. He stepped into the clearing fully, and that's when he saw her. She was moving near the edge of the homestead, adjusting something on the wall. Her movements were confident, precise. She did not flinch when she saw him. Instead, her eyes narrowed slightly, measuring him. Eli noticed her hands were strong, skilled, hands that could build, repair, survive. "Hello," he said cautiously, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Who are you?" "Eli," he said. I didn't think anyone lived here." Her eyes flicked toward the homestead and back to him. "I do, and I like it that way. Why are you here?" "I'm looking," he said simply. "A home. I haven't found one yet." She tilted her head, studying him. Eli realized she was evaluating him, not just for danger, but for usefulness, for character. Humans had learned to survive not by trusting blindly, but by seeing the truth in another person. "You're far from the towns," she said. "You could have stayed in the ruins like everyone else." "I couldn't," he admitted. I need something more." The woman's expression softened slightly, though she did not smile. "Then maybe you're like me. Maybe you don't settle for ruins." Eli nodded. He wanted to ask her more, how she survived, how she built this home, but he sensed he needed to earn that trust first. Humans always had, and in this moment he felt a strange kinship, as if he had finally found another who understood what it meant to endure. He spent the evening helping her with small tasks, moving logs, repairing a weak part of the wall. She watched him closely, offering instructions but not taking over. Eli learned quickly, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The forest around them whispered with life, and the homestead felt like a small island of human determination in a vast, indifferent world. As night fell, the forest glowed faintly with bioluminescent plants, and Eli sat by a small fire she had made. The warmth was welcome, and the smell of cooked food reminded him of something he had almost forgotten: comfort. He realized he had not eaten properly in days. The woman handed him a piece of bread and some preserved fruit. "You survived out there alone for a long time, didn't you?" he asked, not wanting to pry but genuinely curious. "I did," she said simply. "Humans survive if they have to. We always do, but surviving isn't the same as living." Her words struck him. That was exactly what he had been searching for. Not just a place to stay, but a place to live. And for the first time he wondered if maybe he could find that here, in the forest, with her. They did not speak much more that night. Words were not needed. The fire crackled, the wind whispered through the trees, and Eli felt a strange peace. For so long he had wandered alone, searching for a home in cabins in towns that were empty. Now he realized that perhaps home was not a building or a street. It was something else entirely. As he lay under the canopy of glowing leaves, Ellie felt hope stir inside him. Humans could endure anything. They could thrive anywhere. And maybe, just maybe, he had finally found a place where survival was only the first step toward living. The forest was quiet, save for distant calls of alien creatures, and for the first time in a long while, Eli closed his eyes without fear. He did not know if he belonged here. But he knew one thing. He had found a human spirit that matched his own. And that was enough for tonight. Outside, the stars blinked faintly through the trees, alien and unfamiliar, yet somehow welcoming. The firelight danced on the walls of the homestead, casting long shadows that seemed alive. Eli realized that humans were meant to endure, to adapt, to overcome, and that meant hope was never lost. In the deep silence of the alien forest, he felt something he had not felt in years: the possibility of home. The next morning, Eli awoke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the thick canopy of alien trees. The forest was alive with sounds: birds calling, leaves rustling, and the distant hum of an alien river. He stretched and noticed Mara already outside, tending a small patch of vegetables near the homestead. Her movements were confident, deliberate, as if she had been doing this for years, which in fact she had. Eli rose, quietly, careful not to disturb the rhythm of her morning. He watched her plant seedlings with precision, her hands moving quickly and skillfully. It was not just survival, she was thriving. Humans had a way of taking a hostile world and bending it, just enough, to carve a life. He felt a flicker of admiration and humility at the same time. "Morning," he said finally, stepping into the clearing. She glanced up but did not stop working. "Morning," she replied. Her tone was neutral, not cold, but measured. "You slept well?" "As well as I could," Eli said. He noticed the supplies she had gathered the previous night: food, water, tools, all carefully organized. "You live alone here?" "Yes," she said simply. "I prefer it." "No neighbors, no townsfolk, no bureaucracy, just me in the forest." "I would be so happy," Eli nodded, understanding. He had wandered through abandoned towns and cabins, chasing the idea of home, only to find ruins and emptiness. Here, at least, someone had built a life that made sense. "I can help," he offered. "Not much, but I can carry, repair, build." Mara paused, studied him, and finally nodded. "Fine. But listen carefully. Every task has a purpose. Waste nothing, break nothing, and watch how I do it before you try." That was a lesson Eli was quick to learn. The first task was repairing a section of the homestead's wall. Mara handed him a tool, motioning to a loose plank. Eli worked alongside her, following her instructions precisely. "You cut the plank at the wrong angle," she corrected him gently but firmly. "It won't fit." He adjusted his technique, watching how she measured, how she held the wood, and how she judged the strength of every joint. Mara's skills were honed not just from intelligence, but from years of practice. Humans had survived on this planet through patience, observation, and relentless improvement. By mid-morning, they had strengthened one section of the wall. Mara nodded approvingly. "Not bad," she said. "You're learning." Eli smiled. That small praise felt meaningful. In the towns he had visited, humans had failed and left nothing but ruins. Here she had built something lasting, and now she allowed him to contribute. They broke for a simple meal: dried fruits, bread, and water. They ate in silence, but the quiet was not awkward. There was a rhythm to their coexistence, a mutual respect that needed no words. Eli noticed how Mara moved, not just with skill but with purpose, like every action mattered. "You're strong," he said finally, "not just physically, but—" He hesitated. "You've built something here. Alone. That's impressive." Mara looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Humans endure. Humans adapt. I did what I had to. But surviving is not the same as living," Eli added softly, recalling her words from the previous night. Her lips twitched almost a smile. "Exactly." The afternoon brought a challenge. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, a storm approaching faster than usual. Eli watched as Mara calmly assessed the homestead, securing loose planks, reinforcing the roof, and adjusting water channels to prevent flooding. He tried to keep up, running from task to task, learning to think ahead like she did. The storm hit with sudden intensity. Wind ripped through the trees, shaking the homestead violently. Rain fell in sheets, pounding the roof and flooding the clearing. Alien birds screamed, and insects sought shelter in every corner. Eli can rise in ties quite over the wind, and now the second closes up and heads forward. "Not bad for someone who just arrived." Eli grinned despite the storm. "I have a good teacher." For hours they worked side by side. Humans thrived in adversity, and this was a perfect example. The forest was merciless, but two humans, intelligent and resourceful, could face it together. Eli began to see the truth of Mara's earlier words. Surviving wasn't enough. Thriving required observation, planning, and the courage to act. When the storm finally passed, the homestead stood firm, slightly battered but intact. Eli was soaked, exhausted, and exhilarated. Mara glanced at him, her eyes softening. "You did well," she said. "Better than I expected." He laughed, dripping water everywhere. "That was teamwork." She tilted her head, considering him. "Yes." "Teamwork? Not many humans can work like this together." That night, after the fire had been relit and warmth returned to the homestead, Mara and Eli sat quietly. The storm had cleared, leaving the forest fresh and alive. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly, painting the clearing in gentle colors. "I never thought I'd meet another human who could adapt this fast," Mara said. "Humans adapt," Eli replied. "We always do. Even in ruins, even in storms, even when it feels impossible." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, Eli saw a trace of vulnerability. "Sometimes," she admitted, "it feels impossible. But we keep going anyway. That's what makes humans humans." He nodded, understanding fully. It was the truth he had seen everywhere, from abandoned towns to collapsing cabins to the faces of survivors like Mara. Humans survived not because the world was easy, but because they refused to give up. Over the next few days, Eli stayed, helping Mara with daily chores, learning her ways, and earning her trust. They repaired fences, expanded her garden, and improved water filtration. Each task was small, but each task was important. And through it, Eli realized something profound. Home was not a building or a street. Home was a human spirit that refused to break, a partner who matched your strength and determination. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the forest, Eli and Mara sat by the fire. The sky was deep violet, streaked with stars unfamiliar but beautiful. Eli glanced at Mara. "You've made something incredible here," he said softly. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone survive and thrive like you." Mara looked into the fire, her expression unreadable. "I didn't thrive for anyone else," she said. "I did it for me. I chose to stay." Eli nodded slowly. That choice, the courage to endure alone, to build something lasting, was what defined humans. He had wandered from town to town searching for a home, and here was someone who had already created one, not out of luck, but out of determination and skill. The fire crackled and silence fell, comfortable and full of meaning. Eli understood that the forest, the homestead, and even Mara herself were part of a lesson he had learned over years of wandering. Humans are not defined by the places they inhabit, but by their will, ingenuity, and courage. When he finally lay down to sleep, he did so with a sense of hope. Not just because he had found shelter, but because he had found someone who embodied the human spirit he admired. Someone who had already chosen to thrive where others had failed. Someone who showed him that humans were not just survivors, They were creators, builders, and partners, capable of making even the harshest world habitable. Outside, the forest whispered in the night, and the light from the homestead glowed warmly against the darkness. Eli realized that this was only the beginning. Tomorrow would bring more tasks, more challenges, and more chances to prove himself. But for the first time, he felt he could face them, not alone, but alongside someone who understood what it meant to endure, adapt, and thrive. Humans had always fought against impossible odds. They had always found ways to survive where others could not. And now, in the heart of an alien forest, Eli felt the first real glimmer of what it meant to belong, even if only for a while. Because home, he realized, was not a cabin, not a town. It was something alive, something chosen, something human. And Mara had already chosen it. And for the first time, Eli considered the possibility. Maybe he could choose it too. The morning sun filtered through the thick forest canopy, painting the ground with streaks of gold. Eli stretched and shook the sleep from his eyes. Last night he had lain awake, listening to the distant call of alien creatures, thinking about Mara and the life she had built here. She was extraordinary, not just in skill but in spirit. Humans like her were rare, a living proof of what their kind could achieve when pushed to the edge. Mara emerged from the homestead, her movements deliberate and confident. "Morning," she said without looking up, already carrying a basket of supplies. "Morning," Eli replied, stepping carefully over roots and fallen branches. "What's the plan today?" She glanced at him, her eyes sharp and assessing. "We expand the garden. I want more crops before the next storm hits. And I need you to help me reinforce the water channels. Precision matters." Eli nodded. Working alongside Mara had become more than just survival. It was a lesson. Humans thrive through adaptation, observation, and determination. Here, in the heart of this alien forest, he was seeing it firsthand. As they walked to the garden, Mara spoke without looking back. "You learn fast. Most people who wander into the forest would have broken a plank or flooded the channel by now." "I've had to adapt," Eli said simply. "Humans do that. Even in ruins we find ways." Her lips quirked slightly, almost a smile. "You speak well for someone who wandered through dead towns looking for a home." He shrugged. "I was looking for a place to survive, not to thrive. But I think I'm starting to understand the difference." The garden was small but thriving. Mara had organized rows of alien vegetables with precision, and some earth crops she had carefully acclimated to the planet's conditions. Eli followed her instructions as they worked side by side. Every seed planted, every channel repaired, was a testament to human ingenuity. Hours passed quickly. They moved together in harmony, each understanding the other's rhythm. The forest around them hummed with life, and even the alien birds seemed to watch silently. Eli noticed the way Mara adapted to unexpected challenges. Branches blocking water flow, roots tangled in irrigation pipes, and patches of soil too dry to support growth. She assessed, adjusted, and acted, never wasting time or energy. "You notice everything," Eli remarked. "I can teach people, but I've never seen someone who plans for so many details at once." "Humans survive because we anticipate," she said. "Even in towns that fell apart, people left clues, prepared, tried to make things work. I learned from them." By afternoon, the garden expansion was complete. Mara surveyed their work with satisfaction. "Not bad," she said. "Better than I expected." Eli felt a surge of pride. Praise from Mara was rare and meaningful. "Teamwork," he said with a grin. "Teamwork," she echoed, studying him. "You're learning more than I thought. You might actually belong here." That evening, as the twin moons rose and cast silvery light through the forest, Eli and Mara sat near the fire, sharing a simple meal. The air was warm and the forest seemed calm after a day of effort. "You've done well," Mara said softly, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "Most humans wouldn't survive a day in this forest alone, let alone thrive." "I've learned from watching you," Eli admitted. "You've built something incredible here. Alone." "I wanted to survive. You wanted to live." Her eyes met his, and for a moment the air was filled with understanding. Mara's independence and skill were awe-inspiring, yet Eli sensed a hint of loneliness beneath her strength. Humans were not made to endure alone forever. They needed connection, even when it was difficult. "Humans endure," she said quietly. "We adapt, survive, build, but living takes more than survival. It takes trust. And sometimes It takes someone who chooses to stay. Eli understood. That choice, staying, investing, trusting, was the essence of human strength. Mara had already chosen it for herself. Now, he wondered if he could choose it too. The next morning brought a new challenge. While surveying the forest perimeter, Eli noticed signs of movement, strange tracks and broken branches that suggested a large alien predator had passed nearby. Mara assessed the situation calmly, her eyes sharp. "We need to reinforce the perimeter," she said, quickly. "It might come back." Together they worked, setting traps, reinforcing walls, and creating alarms using string and makeshift sensors. Eli watched her closely, noting how humans could turn the simplest tools into life-saving devices. Her ingenuity was remarkable. She adapted Earth methods to alien conditions with precision. Hours of preparation left them exhausted, but the homestead was safer than ever. Eli realized that humans survive not through brute strength alone, but through intelligence, observation, and cooperation. Mara had not just survived, she had built a system capable of defending itself against threats no ordinary human could withstand. At night, Eli couldn't sleep. He lay under the canopy, listening to the forest and thinking about Mara. Her strength, her courage, and her ingenuity had rekindled something in him. Hope. Humans were capable of creating life and safety in even the harshest worlds. And perhaps, he thought, home was not about the walls or the roof, but about finding someone who shared that vision. Mara stirred beside him, sensing his wakefulness. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "I've been thinking," Eli admitted, "about survival, about thriving, about you." She smiled faintly, a rare gesture. "You notice more than most." "It's good. Humans notice. Humans adapt. Humans survive. But the rare ones, they also choose to live." Their conversation was simple yet profound. Words were not needed to understand the human spirit they shared, a spirit that thrived even in isolation, that faced adversity without complaint, that valued ingenuity, courage, and connection. The following days brought a rhythm: morning chores, afternoon challenges, and evenings by the fire. Eli learned to anticipate Mara's moves, to work without instruction, and to act with purpose. They repaired a collapsed section of the wall, built new irrigation channels, and expanded the garden further. Every task strengthened their trust and respect for one another. One evening, as Eli adjusted a panel on the solar collector, Mara watched him silently. "You've changed," she said. "Not just your skills, but your mindset. You're learning what humans are capable of. Most give up before they reach this point." "I've wandered too long," Eli admitted. "I've seen ruins, towns that failed. I wanted a home, but now I think I'm starting to understand that home isn't a place. It's connection, purpose, survival, yes, but living too." Mara's eyes softened. "And choosing to stay, that's the hardest part. It takes courage, trust, and determination." Eli realized that his journey, his wandering, was a preparation. Humans could survive alone, but to thrive, to build a real home, required more than skill. It required another human spirit to match your own. Mara had chosen to stay, to endure, to thrive. And now he faced the same choice. The forest glowed under the alien moons, and the homestead's lights shimmered against the darkness. Eli felt a sense of belonging he had not known in years. Humans had always adapted, survived, and built in impossible places. Now, he understood that thriving required a partner, someone who shared your spirit and vision. Mara was that partner. He sat by the fire, staring at the glowing leaves above, thinking of all the towns he had left behind, all the cabins that had offered temporary shelter but no warmth. Here he found warmth, companionship, and purpose, and in the quiet of the alien forest he felt the first true stirrings of home. Humans survived because they endured, they thrived because they adapted, and they built lasting bonds because they dared to choose connection over isolation. Eli had wandered the galaxy seeking home, and at last he realized it was not a cabin, not a town, not even a wall, but the shared human spirit. And Mara had already chosen it. For the first time, Eli considered that he could choose it too. And maybe in doing so he could finally stop wandering. The night air was calm, and the forest whispered softly, carrying the scent of alien flowers and wet earth. The fire crackled, warm and steady. Eli looked at Mara, her silhouette strong and poised, and felt a sense of peace. Humans endured, they adapted, they thrived, and now, perhaps, they could also find connection. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring more work, more challenges, and more lessons. But tonight, for the first time, he rested without fear. He had found not just a place to survive, but someone to survive and thrive with. And that was the beginning of something extraordinary. The sun had barely risen when Eli awoke, the forest quiet except for the faint rustle of leaves. Today felt different. He stretched, feeling a weight on his chest, one of anticipation and perhaps fear. For years he had wandered from one abandoned town to another, searching for a home that never existed. But now, in the heart of Mara's forest homestead, he faced a choice. He stepped outside, where Mara was already tending the crops, her movements fluid and precise. She glanced at him briefly. "You're up early," she said. "I couldn't sleep," Eli admitted. "I've been thinking about everything." Mara tilted her head, curious but silent. She seemed to sense his inner conflict, the struggle of a wanderer who had always been alone. "I've wandered too long," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I've seen ruins, towns that failed, cabins that couldn't last a season. I've thought I needed a place, a building, a roof, but now I think I understand. Home isn't walls. Home isn't a town. Home is," he hesitated, "someone who chooses to stay, who builds, who thrives even when the world is against them." Mara's eyes softened. "You've learned well," she said quietly. "Not many understand that. Humans survive alone easily, but living requires more. It requires trust, courage, and heart." Eli nodded, feeling the truth of her words in his chest. He had spent years surviving, but now he wanted to live. And perhaps for the first time, he realized that living meant choosing someone as much as choosing a place. Mara had already chosen to stay, to endure, to thrive. Now it was his turn to choose. Their morning was quiet but productive. Together they repaired fences, strengthened the water channels, and expanded the garden. Eli moved with confidence, having learned from Mara's guidance. The forest around them seemed alive, almost aware of their presence. Birds and alien insects moved through the trees, and sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting shifting patterns on the ground. Humans had adapted to this world, and here Eli felt that adaptation deep in his bones. By mid-afternoon, the tranquility shattered. A distant roar echoed through the forest. Mara froze, her eyes scanning the trees. "An apex predator," she said calmly. "It's circling. Could be hunting." Eli's pulse quickened, but he did not panic. Together they moved swiftly, setting traps and reinforcing the perimeter. Mara's ingenuity was remarkable. She used simple materials, branches, metal scraps, ropes, to build alarms and barriers. Eli helped, following her instructions and improvising when needed. The predator arrived as twilight fell, a massive creature with sleek obsidian scales and glowing eyes. It prowled near the edge of the homestead, testing boundaries. Eli and Mara moved quietly, coordinating silently. Every trap, every barrier, every precaution they had prepared was put to the test. The predator lunged at a weakened section of the wall. Mara triggered a trap, a net springing up to block its path. Eli reinforced the barricade with a thick plank. The creature hissed and snarled, thrashing against the barriers, but humans had planned ahead. Every move it made was countered by their ingenuity and teamwork. Finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, the predator retreated into the forest. The threat was gone, but the adrenaline lingered. Eli looked at Mara, admiration and awe in his eyes. You planned for everything," he said. Mara shook her head, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. "I prepared for survival." Humans survive by expecting the unexpected, but living, that takes more. Eli felt the weight of her words. Survival was one thing. Thriving, building, and choosing to share life with another person, that was entirely different, and he realized with clarity that he wanted to take that step. That night the forest was calm again. The homestead glowed warmly against the darkness. Eli and Mara sat by the fire, quiet except for the crackling flames. He turned to her, searching for the right words. "Mara, I've wandered too long searching for home," he began. "I thought I needed a place, a cabin, a town, but I see now that home isn't a building. Home is someone who chooses to stay, someone who builds, who thrives, who faces everything the world throws at them and still smiles. You've done that. And I want to stay. I want to build with you, to live, not just survive." Mara's eyes glistened in the firelight. For a moment she was silent. Then she reached out, placing a hand over his. Ellie, I've been alone for years. I've survived, thrived, and chosen to stay, but I've wondered if someone could understand it all. If someone could choose to be here with me, not out of fear, not out of need, but choice. You understand? And you choose. Eli nodded, squeezing her hand. I choose. A gentle warmth filled the homestead. Humans had always endured impossible odds. They had survived storms, predators, and harsh worlds. They had thrived because they adapted, innovated, and worked together. And now, in the heart of an alien forest, two humans had found not just survival, but connection. The days that followed were filled with purpose and joy. Together, they repaired the homestead, expanded the gardens, and strengthened defenses. Each task was a celebration of ingenuity and resilience. The forest, once a place of solitude and danger, became a partner in their life. Humans had learned to survive alone, but to thrive, they needed another human spirit to match their own. Eli and Mara worked seamlessly. When Mara instructed, Eli executed with precision. When Eli improvised, Mara adapted without hesitation. They laughed, joked, and shared stories of lost towns, abandoned cabins, and humans who had tried and failed before them. Every story was a reminder of their resilience, a testament to the human spirit. One evening, under the twin moons, Mara led Eli to a small platform she had built above the trees. The view was breathtaking. Forest stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with glimmers of alien wildlife. We've built something here, she said softly. Not just walls or gardens. We've built a life. And humans can do this anywhere. Anywhere if we choose to try. Eli looked around, feeling the depth of her words. They had carved home from wilderness, from danger, from loneliness. Humans survived, yes, but they also built, created, and thrived, and now he was a part of it. As they sat side by side, the forest glowing under the moons, Eli realized the truth he had been searching for. Humans could endure impossible odds, adapt to alien worlds, and overcome every challenge. But home was more than that. It was shared courage, ingenuity, and heart. Mara had chosen to stay, to thrive, and to build life here. And now he had chosen to join her, not as a wanderer, but as someone ready to live fully. The fire flickered, casting long shadows across the clearing. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of alien flowers and damp earth. Eli felt the weight of years of wandering lift from his shoulders. He had found more than a homestead. He had found purpose, partnership, and home. You made the choice, she said softly. Humans survive alone. Humans thrive together, and together we can endure anything. Ellie nodded, watching the forest. Humans endure, adapt, thrive, and now we choose. We choose to live, to build, to stay. The homestead glowed warmly against the darkness, a beacon of human ingenuity and resilience. The storm had passed, the predator had retreated, and the forest, once alien and indifferent, now felt like a partner. Eli and Mara had faced the challenges, adapted, and chosen life together. In the quiet under the alien moons, Eli knew this was only the beginning. Humans had always survived the impossible. They had always thrived where others had failed, and now they had chosen connection, courage, and hope. Together they would face every challenge the universe could throw at them. Together they had found home. And for Eli, for Mara, for humans everywhere, that choice was the greatest triumph of all.